Hello, good morning. Anybody online? Good morning. Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Okay. Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry for the delay. So we'll discuss something injuries about the rectum and prolapse of the rectum today. Last class we have talked about the anatomy, the supports of the rectum. They are very important to understand the process of rectal prolapse and rectal injuries. Though rare injuries of the rectum, once they happen, it's very difficult to treat the rectal injuries because of it is a contaminated area and less well supplied with blood. The perineal tissues on either side of the rectum are poorly vascular. So healing of the rectum is very difficult and you have to divert the fecal flow away from the injury by doing colostomy. So multiple procedures are also needed in this case. You have to follow the surgical principles strictly to heal the rectal injuries and the colonic injuries. The commonest type of injury is impalement injury. That is, some objects, vertical objects, long objects protruding into the rectum and perforating the rectum. So when a person falls from a height or a projecting object, it will pierce the perineal tissues or anal canal or the rectum, perforating them. The second type is the penetrating injuries, including the gunshots, either with knife or gunshot to the buttocks. They may pass through the rectal wall, or sexual assaults, or during deliveries, forceps assisted delivery, you may crush the rectum and it may cause injury to the rectum. The iatrogenic causes during sigmoidoscopy, improperly done sigmoidoscopy, or giving enema with a glass syringe. If you push too much, it may perforate the rectum. So these are the iatrogenic injuries. Any object by any means enters into the perineum or the anal canal, it may perforate the rectum and cause injury to the rectal wall. How to diagnose this? The question here is whether rectal injury is involving the intraperitoneal rectum or extraperitoneal rectum. When we were discussing about the peritoneal reflections, we said upper 1/3 of the rectum is covered by peritoneum all round. Middle 1/3 is covered only by the anteriorly and a little of the lateral aspects. Lower third of the rectum is completely extraperitoneal. So that point is very good. When the injury is occurring in the intraperitoneal rectum, it will develop, it will cause severe peritonitis, and there will be signs of peritoneal irritation. Signs of peritoneal irritation will be present. So the first thing you must do while you are suspecting rectal injury and examining the patient is look for signs of peritonitis. Palpate the abdomen for rigidity. That is the most important thing. If the abdomen is soft, no evidence of free fluid, nothing, not tender, then you are safe. The intraperitoneal rectum and the peritoneal cavity are normal. Then you can do if injury is not obvious clinically, we can go for a contrast study of the rectum, water soluble contrast, gastrographin. Water soluble contrast must be given. X-rays are taken. You should not give the barium sulfate. Barium sulfate precipitates in the rectum. If it goes into the extrarectal tissues through the perforation, it may cause a lot of inflammatory problems. So you should not give barium, only water soluble gastrographin contrast must be given. And you can do the CT scan also. If you have the facility, go for CT scan and study the wall of the rectum. If there is a perforation, CT scan will show a breach in the continuity of the muscle. Muscle will be separated. So it indicates the site of the perforation. And anteriorly, you have got the urethra as relation to the rectum. If any doubt is there regarding urethral injury, you can go for urethrogram to exclude the urethral injuries. And finally, you can examine the patient under anesthesia. If the patient is not cooperative or injury is deep enough, you can anesthetize the patient, keep him in lithotomy position, then you can examine the patient thoroughly and decide what to do. Key point in the management is whether the injury is above or below the peritoneal reflection. That's the point. Above or below the peritoneal reflection. The treatment varies according to the location of the injury. And the essential points you must remember is you may need to do a defunctioning colostomy. Defunctioning means it is defunctioning the rectum. The function of the rectum is stopped for some time temporarily, and the fecal matter goes out through the colostomy, pelvic colostomy. Second one is at all costs, while debriding the wound or while treating the wound, you must preserve the sphincters. The sphincter should not be cut or sphincter should not be excised, and sphincters must be preserved. That is the second point you must remember. And they need antibiotic coverage, broad spectrum antibiotic coverage, because it's a contaminated area and there are more chances, 100% of the times, the wound gets infected. So prophylactic as well as therapeutic antibiotics must be given. Defunctioning colostomy, sphincter preservation, and antibiotic cover are the essential points to be remembered in treating injuries to the rectum. Now we will talk what to do if it is above the peritoneal reflection or below the peritoneal reflection. If the injury is intraperitoneal, you have to go for the laparotomy, open the abdomen, identify the injury in the rectum, excise the edges of the rectum, ragged edges must be excised, make them neatly fresh and close it. You suture the rectum. After that, you do the left iliac colostomy. Protective coverage colostomy must be done. If it is extraperitoneal rupture, peritoneum is not contaminated, then you have to give rectal washouts, do the colostomy, and incise the perineum widely so that any discharge or infected material drains freely through the perineum. Just like you have inside the spherical fossa, here I also inside the perineum, keep it open and do the protective colostomy. When the wounds in the perineum have healed, then you may close the colostomies. Or in certain situations, there are large ruptures, majority of the part of the rectum is damaged, then you may do rectal resection with Hartmann's procedure. Hartmann's procedure means the damaged part of the rectum is excised and the lowermost part of the rectum opening is closed down temporarily, and proximal part is brought out as colostomy. So whenever we resect a part of the small bowel or large bowel, we try to anastomose, try to attach the two cut ends of the intestine, which is called as anastomosis. So here, because the ends are not good, not healthy, contaminated, even if you anastomose, there is high chances of leakage, breakdown of the anastomotic suture line. So it is a dangerous thing. It may lead to peritonitis. So to avoid this, to gain some time to clear off the infection, we will divert the fecal matter. So the proximal end is brought out as colostomy and distal end is closed down. When everything is okay, infection has been treated, the ends of the bowel have become healthy, then you may re-anastomose both of them. This is called as Hartmann's procedure. And you have to give broad spectrum antibiotics as and when necessary, and sphincters must be preserved during debridement. Don't be neglected and cut out all these sphincters. That may lead to permanent incontinence. Permanent incontinence. Now the next topic is rectal prolapse. So the rectum is standing out in the perineum, in the pelvic cavity. It is standing out in the pelvic cavity. It is hanging down from the rectosigmoid junction. Rectosigmoid junction. And the fecal matter, when it comes, it stays in the rectum for a long time, for a certain time. So rectum has to bear the weight of the fecal matter or the brunt of the fecal matter. Whenever there is a rise of intra-abdominal pressure, the pressure tries to push down the rectum, loaded rectum especially, push down. That's the second brunt the rectum has to bear. Whenever you strain, the pressure falls on the rectum, so it has to bear down. It has to bear the weight of the fecal matter, and it has to tolerate the pushing effect of the raised intra-abdominal pressure. So it must be strong enough, it must have a strong hold to retain its place in the pelvis with these two types of the stresses. If anything happens, if the rectum becomes weak, or if there is intra-abdominal pressure rise is more or too much, the capacity of the rectal ligaments, then rectum comes down. It descends down, it prolongs outwards. That condition is called as rectal collapse. Very in old people and in children who have not developed the musculature properly, in these two kinds of people, we see the rectal collapse common. You see this beautiful Manhattan Golden Bridge, Golden Gate Bridge. So this is supported, this huge bridge is supported by these wires. They are not the decorative pieces, but they are supporting this huge structure. These such types of things are called as suspension bridges. Suspension bridges. They are not supported mainly from the bottom. They hang down on the wires. They are supported with the wires. So like the rectum also hangs down. It is suspended from the by the ligaments in the middle of the pelvic cavity. So before that rectal prolapse, we review the supports of the rectum. Already we discussed in the last class. The levator cranii muscle is the one main support. Visceral layer of the pelvic fascia. The rectourethralis muscle of Roux, which attaches the anterior part of the rectum and urethra to the perineal body. The rectal stalk or the posterior part of the condensation of the pelvic fascia extending from anorectal junction to third piece, also called as Waldeus, and the fatty tissue of the pelvis and ischiorectal fossa. All these things help the rectum to maintain maintain its position. You can see how many supports are there. Anteriorly Denon-Villiers fascia, posterior Waldeus or rectal stalk, the levator radius muscle, the lateral ligaments. All these things help to support the rectum, which is hanging down in the middle of the pelvic fossa. And the fascia of the rectum also support them. The rectal fascia, it surrounds the rectum, contains the lymph nodes, lymphatics, vessels, everything, etc., and the nerves. And anteriorly, the Denon-Villiers fascia, which separates the rectum from the prostate in male and vagina in female. It also supports, and posteriorly the Waldeus fascia is there. Rectosacral fascia or Waldeus fascia, it supports the anorectal junction to the third piece of the sacrum. This is the Waldeus fascia. Now, what is this rectal collapse? The descent, drop down, or coming out of the rectal wall through the anal opening. So, whenever you examine the anal opening, it will be round with transverse folds all around, small transverse folds, skin folds all around. When the patient strains, in some people, you may see 3 bulges. Anal cushions may be seen in some people, not in all people. That is the normal appearance. And in people having the either huge third-degree hemorrhoids or rectal collapse, you can see mucosa, pinkish mucosa coming out of the anal opening. So you must see only the skin. Even when the patient strains, you should see only the skin covered parts, not the mucosa. If you see the mucosa through the anal opening means it is abnormal. It is abnormal. It may be a prolapsed hemorrhoid or it may be a rectal collapse. The descent, drop down or coming out of rectal wall through the anal opening is called as rectal collapse. There are various types, we will discuss it. It can be a mucosal or a partial collapse, or it can be a complete or full thickness collapse. Only mucosa can collapse, or the entire wall, including the mucosa, submucosa, the muscle of the rectum also gets collapsed, which is called as full thickness collapse. So there are 2 ways of describing it. So one is depending on the thickness of the wall. Only the mucosa collapse, it is called as mucosa partial collapse. When the entire wall of the rectum gets collapsed, it is called as full thickness collapse. The second way of describing is depending on the part of the rectum circumference that is collapsed. Only one sector of this circumference is collapsed. You can call it as incomplete collapse. When the entire circumference collapses, it is called as complete collapse. So you can describe it by the thickness or by the part of the circumference that is collapsed. In 2 ways you can describe it. In children, usually it is mucosal and which can be treated conservatively. In adult people, often it is full thickness. It is associated with incontinence. It needs surgery, either perineal or abdominal surgery. Children, it will be usually partial, only mucosal collapse. It can be treated conservative measures. In adults, it is often full thickness and complete. It is associated with incontinence, so they need surgery. The types of collapses: incomplete, mucosal or partial less than 4 centimeters, complete or full thickness more than 4 centimeters with heterocele and incontinence. So clinically, while examining, we measure the length of the collapse from anal margin. If it is less than 4 centimeters, usually it will be mucosal or partial. When it is more than 4 centimeters, we take it as complete collapse, full thickness complete collapse. If you palpate anterior part of the collapse by keeping your finger in the lumen, you may feel the gurgling sensation of small bowel. That means the associated enterocele hernia is also present. In between the folds of the rectum, the small bowel also will be present, which is called as enterocele. So full circumference more than 4 centimeters with enterocele in adults, it is full thickness, complete prostodentia or complete collapse. So depending on the completeness indicates the circumference, partial or full thickness indicates the thickness of the wall, either mucosa or the wall. The differences, mucosal or partial will be only mucosa, submucosa, common in infant and children, less than 4 centimeters, no peritoneal protrusion, can be treated conservatively. In adults, it is full thickness interception. Adults and old people, it is seen more than 4 centimeters. Associated peritoneal protrusion with small bowel herniation will be present, which is called as enterocele. Surgical treatment is often required. We'll talk about the mucosal collapse. It is more common in infants. If you see this picture, you can understand this. The rectum is almost straight, the sacrum almost straight. So no sacral curve has developed yet, and the rectum is not supported that much. The muscles are weak, there is no bony support. So in these instances, the incidence of collapse is more. So in infants, it's a direct downward course of the rectum, undeveloped sacral curve, and reduced restriction of the anal canal. These are the factors favoring the mucosal collapse in infants and children.
8:35.
In children, it is often precipitated by malnutrition. So there is no good muscle development, no good fatty support in the spherical fossa. So the rectum remains unsupported, and there are more incidences of diarrhea in children with repeated episodes of raised intra-abdominal pressure and more pushing on the rectum. The child strains much with diarrhea. All these factors will cause collapse of the rectum. It is usually seen after an attack of diarrhea when the patient loses weight and fat in the spherical fossa. It may be associated with cystic fibrosis. These children of cystic fibrosis do not have the pancreatic function. They do not digest and absorb the fatty material and protein material. No calories, no protein. They are extremely malnourished. So they may develop rectal collapse. And if there are any neurological causes, spina bifida with weakness of the lower limbs and lower part of the body, they may develop the rectal collapse or maldevelopment of the pelvis. Developmental anatomical parts of the pelvis are there. So these are the various factors leading to malnutrition and associated rectal collapse in children. Can we see mucosal collapse in adults? Of course, yes. In certain special situations, usually we see full thickness complete collapse in adults, but you can see partial one sector collapse of the mucosa also in adults. In special situations like with third degree hemorrhoids, associated with hemorrhoids, when the hemorrhoids collapse, the mucosa also pulled down. And torn perineum in women. After delivery, if there is perineal tear and if it is not repaired properly, these women, they develop the mucosal collapse. And urethral obstruction leading to repeated straining also encourages the mucosal collapse. And weakness of the sphincter mechanism in old people, and after surgery for fistula in ano. After surgery for fistula in ano also, we can develop the mucosal collapse. So in certain special situations, you can see only mucosal collapse even in adults. And now the question is, whenever you see a mucosal collapse, not incomplete mucosal collapse, only one side, then you have to decide whether it is mucosal collapse or a collapse in hemorrhoids. Collapsed mucous membrane is pinkish in color. It will be pinkish in color, and the folds, if you observe, are transverse. The folds of the mucosa on the rectum are transversely placed. If you carefully observe, the color will be pinkish and transverse folds will be seen. Prolapsed internal hemorrhoids are plum colored. They are not pink, they are reddish blue, because it's the venous blood, they appear reddish blue. And the folds will be vertical. Hemorrhoids are nothing but the elongated, the descended anal columns. So they will be longitudinally disposed. Whereas mucous membrane will be transversely disposed. So if you see a little carefully, you can discriminate prolapse of the piles. So these are the vertical masses descending down. These are the prolapsed hemorrhoids. They are not mucous membrane. Treatment in infants and children, conservative measures are often helpful. Digital repositioning for 6 weeks. You instruct the mother to just push it inside and improve the nutrition of the child. So once the nutrition improves, muscles develop, fat accumulates, then the rectum will be supported and the condition will be cured. If it fails even after 6 weeks of conservative management, you may try submucosal phenol injections. Submucosal phenol injections at several places. So this phenol in almond oil will generate fibrosis, inflammatory fibrosis. So the fibrosis attaches the mucosa to the underlying muscle. This is just like putting a drawing pins on the paper. So if you want to fix the drawing sheet on the cardboard, we pin it at several places using the drawing pins. Just like that, if you create fibrosis at multiple points of mucosally, these points will attach the mucosa to the underlying muscle, preventing the collapse. Even if this fails, then you have to fix the rectum to the sacrum. You have to operate and do the rectal sacropexy. Rectal sacropexy. Rectum is sutured to the curve of the third piece of the sacrum. So that is a last resort you have to do in children and infants. Usually, conservative measures are successful here. Treatment in adults, if they are having incomplete partial collapse, incomplete mucosal collapse, you can try local treatments like submucosal injections or rubber banding. So the banding technique which is used to remove the hemorrhoids can also be tried here. You can pull the mucosa into the instrument and apply a band, which will be followed by necrosis and falling of the excess mucosa. Or you can try submucosal injections of phenol in almond oil. Or surgically, you can excise the prolapsed mucosa. You can remove the excess mucosa, prolapsed mucosa, and suture it for continuity of the mucosa. This can be done in two ways. One is by applying Goodsell's ligature. Goodsell's ligature. So in only one sector, you see the prolapsed mucosa. You pass thread at two places and divide this prolapse into three parts. And after ligation the suture, the excess mucosa is cut away. This is called as Goodsell's ligature. Horizontal suturing and division of the mucosal collapse into segments, and the excess mucosa is excised. Goodsell's ligature. If you see the picture, you can understand this. This is the so this is very broad. You cannot ligate it simply with a single suture. It will slip away. So to prevent slipping, You pass the thread at two places through the base of the prolapsed mucosa, divide it into three segments and ligate it. Then excise the excess part of the mucosa. This will heal nicely. So this is Goodson's ligating. If it is circumferential, sorry, if it is circumferential, we can do endoluminal stapling. So you have heard of the stapler hemorrhoidectomy in the last class, the previous class. So you pass the stapling gun, you take the Weizmann pulsing sutures on the mucosa and submucosa, attach it to the gun and fire it. So a circumferential segment of the mucosa, submucosa along with the hemorrhoidal masses will be cut, and the cut ends will be stapled together in a single event. Like that, you can use the stapling gun and excise the redundant mucosa with the stapling gun. Or you can do the internal de Lorme's procedure. So de Lorme's procedure is dissecting out the mucosa separately from the muscle. The muscle is plicated. The muscle is made short by plicating sutures, and the excess mucosa is excised and it is sutured, so that the prolapsed part of the muscle is drawn inside. You are making the prolapsed segment shorten so that it lies inside the pelvis or inside the deep to the anal canal. So if you do it outside, it is de Lorme's procedure. You can same thing can be done internally to shorten the muscle and excise the mucosa. When it is circumferential mucosal prolapse, you have to go for endoluminal stapling or de Lorme's procedure. When it is unilateral or sectoral, you can apply the Goodson's ligature, or you can try the submucosal injection or rubber banding. These all help in adult patients, not in infants or children. So this is the procedure: endoluminal stapling. Mucosa is cut and separated from the muscle. Muscle is plicated and mucosa is anastomosed. If it is a full thickness prolapse, it is a major procedure, difficult to treat. No definite surgical procedure which is 100% effective is not there. Multiple procedures are described. So depending on the situation, patient's nature and the condition, you have to select one of the procedure and do it. This can be repaired by open operation, through the abdomen, or through the perineum, or by laparoscopy. Many procedures are described. This is rare in children except in severe malnutrition. In children with cystic fibrosis where they are extremely malnourished, they may develop a complete collapse. Otherwise, it will be partial. And adults with anorexia nervosa, some psychological problems, these anorexia nervosa people, they won't eat. They obsessively, they do not eat and become very malnourished. And old people with weak pelvic floor, this is the main category where we see the complete collapse. Older people with weak pelvic floor muscle in women as well as in men. This is 6 times more common in women than in men. If you see this picture, you can understand this is very thick, more than 4 centimeters from the anal watch, and anteriorly you will have a bulge here. This is called as prostudentia. This is less common than the mucosal prolapse. Seen in old women with weak pelvic floors, it starts as intersusception of the rectal wall. That means the proximal part of the rectal wall invaginates into the distal part. Proximal rectum invaginates into the distal rectum. Which is nothing but a intersusception. Contains all the layers of the rectal wall more than 4 centimeters in length. It contains enterocele anteriorly, and because of passage of this huge mass out of this anus, the sphincters become patulous. Anal sphincters become patulous, and there will be fecal incontinence, and associated uterine prolapse may be there. So the disgusting symptom is fecal incontinence. They suffer with fecal incontinence. That's why they want relief. Otherwise, these old people, they do not bother much about the masses coming out. But when there is fecal incontinence, it is very disturbing to them. So they are present for treatment. You can see the picture here. Anteriorly pelvic peritoneal fold will be there, into which the intestine comes out, which is called as enterocele. The complications of prolapse are rectal ulceration and bleeding. The prolapsed part, mucosa becomes ulcerated and it bleeds. Then incontinence. Sometimes if the old person is unlucky, it may become incarcerated with strangulation of the rectum. Incarceration and strangulation, just like the hernia. The obstructed hernia progresses to strangulated hernia where there will be loss of blood supply and gangrene. Like that, if the mass is huge and at the anal opening there will be constriction, the blood supply becomes jeopardized and the prolapsed part becomes ischemic and necrosed. That is one of the most dangerous complication of the rectal prolapse. The usual complications are ulceration and bleeding and fecal incontinence. The dangerous life-threatening complication is incarcerated or strangulated prolapse. The differential diagnosis, ileocecal intussusception in children and rectosigmoid intussusception in adults. So differential diagnosis you must rule out is intussusception. In children, the ileocecal intussusception will be so lengthier so that it comes out of the anal opening. In adults, the rectosigmoid intussusception also comes out. So if you see this picture here, if you see at this point, there will be continuity of the skin and the mucosa. Continuity of the mucosa and the skin and the anal verge. This point says that it is prolapse, not the intussusception. In case of intussusception, an outer tube will be there, inner tube will be there. In between these two tubes, you have a space, clear space. That space is not present here. If you try to push your finger here, your finger will not be allowed because they are fused together. In case of intussusception, you can freely pass your finger into the depths and all around the mass. You can put your finger and feel it all around, it is intussusception. If you cannot do it, it is postdential prolapse. In this picture, you can see this is the prolapse where mucosa and skin are attached. You cannot push your finger. Here, you can push your finger into the depths all around. This is intussusception. The treatment is either abdominal rectopexy, can be done by open procedure or laparoscopically. With abdominal procedures, less recurrence, less than 10% is noted, but there is pelvic nerve damage with possible sexual dysfunction. So if you are operating on a young man with prolapse by abdominal route, you must warn him, caution him about the possible dysfunction because of the nerve damage. In perineal procedures, they are safer. They can be done under spinal anesthesia. They are suitable for thin and frail old people. In old people who cannot tolerate the major abdominal procedure, we can go for simpler perineal procedures, but the incidence of recurrence will be more in case of perineal procedure. It is about 30%. The perineal procedure will have minimal postoperative pain. Early mobility can be encouraged. Patient can walk about after 24 hours, and low levels of morbidity at the cost of high recurrence rate. All these advantages are there at the cost of high recurrence. So this is reserved for old and high risk people who cannot tolerate the abdominal procedures. So in young people with long life, we have to go for a procedure with less recurrence, abdominal procedure. But you must be careful to identify, to preserve the hypogastric nerve plexus, to identify and preserve hypogastric nerve plexus while mobilizing the rectum from the sacral curve. The perineal procedures available are, the simplest age-old procedure is Thieves stitch. Thieves stitch. So this type of stitch you might have heard in gynec also. When the woman is having repeated abortions, they will pass, and the second trimester, they will pass a suture around the cervix and tie it. So likewise, here you can pass a thread in the subcutaneous area in the anal margin and tie it so that the mass does not come out. For this tying, we can use the steel wire, or you can use elastic wires, or nylon, or polyene, or sutupack. Some non-absorbable material which can stay for a long time is used, and which is passed subcutaneously and tied, so that it will moderately narrow the anal opening and prevent the procidential mass coming out. The disadvantage of this teeth stitch are suture breakdown. Sometimes the wire may break down, and because this is non-absorbable, it may cause irritation and chronic perineal sepsis may be there, and some people develop functional constipation. If you narrow the lumens too much, they may develop the constipation. This is the teeth stitch. On either side of the anal opening, you make a small skin incisions. On either side of the anal opening, you pass the hollow needles. You pass the wire or suture material through the hollow needle and tie it. While tying, you must keep your finger in the anal opening and tie it so that you will not narrow the anal opening too much. Other perineal procedures are Delaunay's procedure, where the ductal mucosa is removed circumferentially. The prolapse, the sagging, the excess mucosa is cut, then muscle is plicated into a neosphincter which prevents the recurrence. The muscle is shortened transversely by applying purstring suture at 4 places, and the cut mucosal ends are sutured again, and everything, all the mass is pushed inside. So the plicated muscle forms a neosphincter-like thing, additional sphincter, apart from the external and internal anal sphincter, natural sphincters. An additional sphincter is created just above the internal sphincter, which will prevent the collapse of the rectal wall. And this procedure is suitable for short segment full rectal collapse with the recurrence rate as high as 30% over 5 years. With Delaunay's procedure, the recurrence rate is 30%. This is the Delaunay's procedure. Mucosa is separated, it is excised, the lengthened muscle is plicated with purstring sutures. Then the cut ends of this cut end and this cut end are sutured again. Other perineal approaches are Altmeier's procedure, which is a major procedure where the excess muscle is not plicated but excised. The rectal prolapsed rectal wall is pulled out of the anal canal. It is excised and the cut ends are sutured. A drastic procedure. This is suitable for incarcerated or strangulated prolapse. So it is a must there. You have to remove the gangrenous part of the bowel. So actually you have to do the laparotomy and excise the rectum. So to avoid laparotomy, here the prolapsed mucous muscle is pulled downwards, it is excised, and the cut ends are anastomosed. This can be done recurrence after Delarome's procedure. If the person recurs, prolapse recurs after Delarome's, then you can plan for the Artemius procedure. And in this procedure, recurrence rate ranges from 0 to 20%. So this is a very drastic procedure, major procedure. So the muscle is, the mucosa is, rectal wall is separated. These are the vessels. The vessels are clamped and tied. Excess muscle is sutured and contents are anastomosed. Now the abdominal approaches. There are three classical approaches through the abdomen, open procedure. One is Wells operation, where polyvinyl sponge is inserted in between the rectum and the sacrum, so that it induces the fibrosis. It will plicate the rectal wall to the sacrum, attaches the rectal wall to the sacrum. Second one is Ripstein operation. A rectosigmoid junction is hitched up with a Teflon sling. Teflon sling is passed underneath the rectosigmoid junction. It is passed extraperitoneally and sutured to the anterior abdominal wall. So the rectosigmoid junction is pulled up or hanged to the anterior abdominal wall, preventing the collapse of the rectal wall. Or Lahout's operation, where the rectosigmoid is extraperitonealized. It is pulled up and it is brought into the extraperitoneal tissue, again hanging the rectum up, preventing the prolapse. The most commonly performed one is the Wells operation, where the polyvinyl sponge is inserted. Or nowadays we are inserting the Prolene mesh, which we use for hernia repair. Here we use the Prolene mesh, fix it to the sacrum and attach it to the lateral walls of the rectum. This is the one, Wells operation. Polyvinyl sponge is wound around the rectum, suture to the sacrum. These are the varieties of the rectopexies. Posterior mesh rectopexy, where mesh is kept posteriorly. Anterior mesh rectopexy, where it is kept anteriorly and fixed to the sacral promontory. Suture rectopexy, no mesh is used, simply the wall is, rectal wall is sutured to the sacrum. Resection rectopexy, the loose part of the rectum is excised and ends are anastomosed. And laparoscopic rectopexy, done by laparoscopy. So this is the resection rectopexy, where the elongated loose part of the rectum is excised, sigmoid and rectum is excised and anastomosed. These are resection procedures are very dangerous, they are major procedures. Laparoscopy, same thing, the rectum is mobilized, mesh is fixed to the sacrum with the tackers and it is attached to the rectal wall. First it is fixed to the sacrum, then attached to the rectal wall. So there are various treatments for treating the complete rectal collapse with variable percentages of success rates. So depending on the person, its fitness, you have to select the suitable procedure. Simple perineal procedure suitable in old people where they can tolerate it very much. And in young people with long life, we have to select a good procedure with less complications and more durability and avoid the complication. You must always try to preserve the sacral plexus of nerves, hypogastric nerve, which will be present as a U-shaped one on either side of the rectum. You have to identify it and preserve it. The prognosis, the resection procedures are gold standard for procedure prolapse, but they are attended with more complications. The relapse of mucous prolapse can be prevented by improving nutrition and treating the cause. So correct the malnutrition if they have got the good muscles, good pelvic fascia and fat in the ischorectal fossa, they all support the rectum to maintain its position. And rectopexy cures incontinence only in 1/3 of the people. So even though you recover, you repair it, the problem of incontinence is cured only in 1/3 of the people. So you must warn the patient against this complication. Then proctitis. So proctitis, in the next class we'll talk. The time is up. The proctitis again is a big chapter. We'll talk it in the next class. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do you have any class in the, after 9? Hello? Hello? Do you have the class after 9?
Sir, we
Yes,
have
sir.
clinical questions, sir.
Posting on
Yes, sir.
Sorry, proctitis will talk in next class. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.